tonight. Businesses and industry brace for a possible rail shutdown. Also, in hard times for media companies, we connect with people who are working to bolster Indigenous news coverage in our province. Plus, since making its Olympic debut in Paris, breaking has been a hot topic. Local dancers break down Canada's medal and the memes.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Tuesday, August 20th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thank you for joining us. A potential rail shutdown could have huge financial impacts here in Saskatchewan. Both CN Rail and Canadian Pacific Kansas City, Canada's two main rail networks, are in the midst of labor disputes that could stop trains come Thursday. Alexander Kwan has more.
Well, it'll be catastrophic. There's no other way to really to say it.
Both Canadian Pacific Kansas City and the Canadian National Railway are in disagreement with the Teamsters Canada Rail Conference Union. The two sides have exchanged lockout warnings and strike notices, setting up a potential rail shutdown for Thursday morning. That's a problem for Saskatchewan. Farmers like Lee Moats are especially challenged. The markets for his lentils are not in Canada, but rather overseas in places like India. That means they're reliant on getting their produce to ports, with rail being the only solution.
They provide service on their own terms as opposed to our terms. So an interruption in service really means then that our outlet to the world is cut off.
The province's mining industry feels just as much pressure. Industry leaders say they're already implementing contingency plans, especially in the potash sector.
We are entirely reliant on rail. You can't move that by any other way. With having both CN and CP out at the same time, it means we have no options in terms of how we move our potash to market.
Most mines have only 4 to 7 days worth of storage, and if that fills up, companies may have to shut down operations, which could mean layoffs. One expert in labor politics says, despite the dire warnings, this rail dispute has been a long time coming.
We've seen these issues, kind of pushed aside for a long time. Worker fatigue and worker health and safety on the rail lines have been one of the central issues in collective bargaining for well over a decade. So in some ways, we've pushed these issues down the road.
Last week, Saskatchewan called for the federal government to step in and ensure there is no service disruption. It's a call the province repeated in a statement issued Tuesday afternoon. Now all eyes turn to whether an agreement can be reached before Thursday morning, when trains would grind to a halt. Alexander Kwan, CBC News, Regina.
A 26-year-old man from Yohoil First Nation is charged with second-degree murder. Cole Smoky Day is also charged with assault and uttering threats in the death of 24-year-old Terrence Tony Kisheanu on Sunday. RCMP say they were called to a home on the First Nation Sunday. A woman was declared dead at the scene by paramedics. Smoky Day is scheduled to be in court today in Melfort. The Canada Border Services Agency experienced a partial systems outage today, and it led to problems with customs processing at the country's airports. Many self-serve customs kiosks were down. The outage affected kiosks at 2 terminals at Toronto's Pearson International Airport. That led to longer wait times for travelers. Customs processing was slower than usual at Montreal's Pierre Elliott Trudeau International Airport too. Late this afternoon, the CBSA said the problem was resolved, but the agency has not indicated what caused the outage. Canada's inflation rate fell 2.5% in July, the lowest in more than 3 years. It's one of the indicators the Bank of Canada will take into account before its next interest rate decision on September 4th. Scott Peterson has the details.
Inflation is moving in the right direction. That's according to what officials at the Bank of Canada want, and probably most Canadians across the country as well, wanting prices to ease, to get more buying power. And this is a result of all those rate hikes that we saw from the Bank of Canada to slow the economy, to bring down prices. So that, in effect, is working. It would have come down even more if it had not been for gasoline prices up almost 2.5% just during the month of July alone. When you look at that peak, we were at 8.1%. That was decades high inflation back in June 2022. Last year, for comparison's sakes, we were at 3.3%, so prices going in the right direction. We're looking at individual items. Food prices cooling, 2.7% is the increase year over year, but travel tours actually coming down close to 3%. Passenger vehicles down almost 1.5%, and used vehicles down 5.7%. And that's an interesting metric because during the height of the pandemic, used vehicle prices were up close to 34% because of hard to get parts and supply side disruptions. But going further, shelter prices up 5.7%. That's the smallest increase in 17 months. Good news there. But rent costs still up 8.5% year over year, and mortgage interest costs up a whopping 21% for anyone having to refinance their mortgages during this time. It is painful to do so. A lot of questions now as far as what the Bank of Canada is going to do at their next September 4th interest rate decision. Pretty much unanimously from economists, they believe that we are going to see a third rate reduction. So good news for a lot of mortgage holders out there and anyone with high debt levels. But the question economists now have is, might we see a couple more before the year end to prop up the economy from slumping too much? Scott Peterson, CBC News, Toronto.
Last month, we told you about how times are tough for small-town newspapers right across the country. The same can be said for news outlets focusing on Indigenous news. Declining ad revenue and a social media news ban have meant some major changes, all at a time when Indigenous people are still underrepresented in newsrooms. But as Ethan Williams reports, there are some who are making the best of these changes, determined to inspire the next generation.
It's day one for these students at First Nations University of Canada. They're part of a course on journalism and broadcasting run by the Indigenous Communication Arts, or INCA, program. For Jada Bowden-Herney, it's a chance to come back to where her career started. She's a graduate of the program, and she helped create this week-long course. She believes media outlets need more Indigenous journalists.
They like to say that they have room for spaces for us, but then as soon as we show any signs of our past trauma that has happened to us, usually we're not met with open arms. We're kind of pushed aside.
A 2023 survey of around 6,000 journalists in Canada found around 5% identify as Indigenous. That's down from 6.4% in 2021. The number of Indigenous journalists in newsroom leadership roles has also dropped steadily since then. Bowden-Herney says more Indigenous-focused news outlets could be part of the solution.
You have more opportunities for Indigenous people, but you also have more room for them to be who they are without feeling like they are living in this colonial world that doesn't fit for them.
Hey everybody.
Carrie Benjo hopes these students can come work for her. A reporter for 2 decades, Benjo took over Eagle Feather News, an Indigenous-focused news outlet, in 2021. In February, the monthly paper went on hiatus after Meta's ban on Canadian news tanked its ad revenue. Now, after some financial restructuring, it's come back as a quarterly magazine. Benjo says advertisers and many nonprofits rely on the publication, and she and her team still wanted physical copies for readers without internet access.
We do know that our stories are still needed, the public still needs it, the community still needs it, so we're going to do our best to meet those needs.
As some papers make changes, others are just getting started. Dan Senek is the publisher of 2 weekly newspapers in the province. Now he's started a publication solely focused on Indigenous news. He's using reporters and editors at the other 2 papers and some freelancers to compile stories.
It's a profile of Saskatchewan Indigenous people, positive stories, so promoting what people have accomplished from those communities. These people will have then untold stories, and we're coming across them every day, so it's something we feel that should be shared with the readers of Saskatchewan.
About 10,000 copies of the publication are sent to Indigenous communities across the province each month. For now, the paper has no online presence, so it's not affected by Meta's ban. And its wide reach means advertisers are interested.
So you guys filmed your promos, or are you guys about to? We were just about to. Just about to, yeah.
Back in class, this next generation of journalists is getting ready to record a podcast for an upcoming powwow. And Hannah Scott is making sure the audio levels are just right. She's not sure where her career will take her, but the third-year Inca student knows she wants to work with Indigenous communities. Scott also knows her involvement in Indigenous media can lead to reconciliation.
I didn't want to be, taking up space as a non-Indigenous person, but I knew that there was room for me to be there, to be a helper and to be someone as an ally and an advocate for, and, to help raise Indigenous voices instead of standing in the way of that.
For Jada Bowden-Herney, seeing that excitement in the students reminds her of when she was in their shoes.
We're throwing things at them and they're just like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do an interview. I'll do a streeter. And they're just confident. Seeing that confidence in this generation just makes me so happy because I just feel like the next generation, we're in good hands, I think.
Even with an uncertain media future, they'll work together to keep telling stories. Ethan Williams, CBC News, Regina.
Well, it's like a scene out of Three Billy Goats Gruff, except there are way more goats and there's not a bridge. These guys are essentially mowing the weeds in Regina by eating them. You can visit them along Wascana Creek from sunrise to sunset. Just don't feed them, keep your dog on a leash, and stay away from the electric fence. We'll be back after the break. Since making its Olympics debut in Paris, breaking has been a hot topic. Canada's B-boy won a gold medal and has inspired newbies and veterans. But some people are asking, is it really a sport? And will it ever be in the games again? So we stopped by a competition in Saskatoon.
I love breaking in front of people because sometimes there is the youth that looks at it and is like, wow, I want to do that, because a lot of people think they don't know what breaking is, and I love to show what it can become.
Breaking started out in the 1970s and was an underground art form for youth to express themselves. Breaking being put in the Olympics is definitely a lot more recognition towards it. A lot of people are more interested. I mean, it is still pretty fresh, but I feel like more kids and youth and just in general, people who are interested might try it more and maybe sign up for classes. Shout out to B-Girl Reagan and for being selected in the Olympics and to qualify. I know there's been a lot of memes, some controversies and a lot of things kind of going on. She did qualify, and the thing with breaking, and that's where you kind of go back to that artistic component. There is still that subjective side.
I just can't give a straight answer on whether or not if it was a great performance or a bad performance. Some people might say it's a great performance to show who she is as a person. Some people might say it's a bad performance because she didn't represent her country to the fullest and should have trained more.
The unfortunate thing is a lot of people are putting a lot of light on Reagan, where there's also other athletes as well that did a really great job and deserve some recognition.
Seeing our country take gold for the first time for breaking, and for breaking to be the first ever in the Olympics, is really inspiring for myself, because it shows that we're able to push ourselves to the limits. Honestly, breaking is for everybody. Sometimes it might be intimidating. You might walk by and some dude is spinning on their head going crazy. But it literally starts super simple, right? You could literally try it in your room. It's given me a lot of opportunities out there to meet and grow myself as a person. So it might not be on the athletic side, but with that community building and finding out who I am as a person, it's literally for everybody.
X-Force. Nice, hey.
The weather update is brought to you by Capital GMC Buick Cadillac. Employee pricing is on now.
And our weather specialist, Tyreek Reed, joins me now. All I see is opportunities for me to fall on my face. That's all I see when I watch. Do you have these moves? Can you break?
I don't think I can. If I tried to break dance, I'd probably just break a leg. So we're not.
That's what breaking means in my world too. Broken bones.
Exactly. So you get me, right? So we're gonna ignore that and focus on the heat that we're feeling today. We're definitely feeling a lot of that heat down in South and Central Saskatchewan. To the north, we're finally seeing daytime highs around seasonal today, but as we head further down into South and Central, we're seeing daytime highs in the low to mid 30s in a lot of areas. And of course, with that humidex, some areas like Estevan getting closer to 40 this afternoon. Now, this ridge of warm air is going to break down over the next 24 hours. So tomorrow we will be seeing more seasonal daytime highs. So we just got to push through this heat a little while longer. We're also pushing through some severe thunderstorm activity in some areas of the province. We can see down to the southeast that is still heading out of the province. Because of that, we're seeing some severe thunderstorm watches and warnings. That's also extending into Manitoba. We also have some severe thunderstorm watches and warnings to the northeast, where we have a separate system of rainfall that is expected to move through that region this afternoon. Now, as we head further into tonight, we're going to have another system move through parts of the southwest, and that will head east through the night. We could see that in areas like Regina tonight. Heading into tomorrow, most of that severe weather will be in South and Central Saskatchewan. To the north, we aren't expecting any severe weather, but we will be seeing some rainfall in the region tomorrow. So we're going to want to prepare for all of that. Heading into Thursday, most of the province will be expecting mostly dry weather conditions, and that will continue throughout the rest of the week ahead. Now, taking a look at current wind speeds, we're seeing mostly strong wind gusts to the north. Down in South and Central, those wind gusts are around 30 kilometers an hour. As we head into tomorrow, we're still going to be feeling those breezy conditions as those systems start rolling through parts of South and Central Saskatchewan. Heading into Thursday, we're also going to be dealing with those breezy conditions as well, but we won't be dealing with that active weather. Now, let's take a look at our 7-day forecast here in Regina. Chance of thunderstorms tomorrow. Heading into Thursday and the rest of the week ahead, mostly dry conditions, but that heat will be rolling back in over the weekend. Sunday seeing daytime highs at around 36 degrees. And of course, with that humidex, it could feel like 40. So we're going to want to prepare for that. Stay hydrated. Heading into the week ahead, that active weather will be making a return to Regina. Up in Saskatoon as well, that active weather will be met tomorrow, and heading into Thursday and Friday, a break, mostly dry conditions, but that will roll back in over the weekend and for the week ahead. So a lot of active weather, Sam. We're not quite done with it just yet.
Well, thank you for that, Ty. Thanks for breaking down the weather.
So funny.
Stay with us. It is indeed the dog days of summer as Saskatoon staggers the closure of its outdoor pools for the season. Mayfair is now closed to the public, but not without a send-off fit for our furry friends. Today, the outdoor pool hosted a free event for licensed dogs. It was a full-day affair, opening at 8 o'clock for service and therapy dogs first and running all the way until 8 o'clock tonight. We'll be back after the break. There are calls to rescind the appointment of one of Canada's newest senators. Broadcaster Charles Adler, who spent decades hosting talk radio shows, is being criticized for on-air comments he made back in 1999. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs calls the remarks, quote, grossly offensive. Adler is a self-described conservative commentator and writer. Over the weekend, the Prime Minister selected him to represent Manitoba in the upper chamber. The Manitoba Chiefs have complained that Adler has used terms such as uncivilized boneheads to describe Indigenous leaders. Justin Trudeau's choice is also drawing fire from inside his cabinet. In a statement, the Minister of Northern Affairs says there are many Manitobans better suited to represent the province in the Senate. The Quebec government is putting a freeze on new temporary foreign workers who hold low-wage jobs in the Montreal area. Premier François Legault says the 6-month freeze will apply to new applications and renewals, but will exempt nurses, teachers, construction workers, food production employees, and those making at least $57,000 a year. Legault says the total number of temporary immigrants across Quebec doubled to 600,000 in 2 years, straining housing, social services, healthcare, and education. Today is day 2 of the Democratic Party's national convention in Chicago. The current vice president, Kamala Harris, is all but guaranteed to be named as the party's choice as candidate for the presidency. And last night was a symbolic and emotional passing of the torch from Joe Biden. Katie Simpson has more.
The United Center here in Chicago, it is home turf for former U.S. President Barack Obama, and he is the headline speaker at tonight's convention. He remains one of the most popular and influential members of his party, and he and his wife, Michelle Obama, will both make a case to voters and people here in this room for Kamala Harris.
I think the former President Obama is going to talk about that hope thing, right? The thing that really catapulted him into his historic election and served him well over the course of 2 terms.
Democrats have tried to frame this election and their opponent, Donald Trump, as an existential question for America, and they paint Donald Trump as an existential threat to the country. And that is going to be a theme for tonight's programming. Former Republicans, as well as former staffers for Donald Trump, they're going to be speaking about their own personal experiences as to why they agree with Democrats on that point. Kamala Harris will be skipping tonight's events in Chicago, which is not unusual. She'll actually be campaigning a couple of hours north in here in Milwaukee. There is a real sense of excitement, of energy and joy now that there has been this historic change to the Democratic ticket. There have also been major shows of respect for President Joe Biden.
I love the job, but I love my country more.
In an emotional and fiery speech, Joe Biden offered his full endorsement of Kamala Harris, marking a generational shift in power that the Democratic Party is experiencing and will hope will resonate beyond the walls of this convention center. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Chicago.
And Tyreek is back with one last look at your weather. I promise no more puns.
Thank you, Sam. So tonight we're still going to be feeling that warm air in Regina. Waking up tomorrow morning, we could be waking up to some showers, so you're going to want to take that umbrella outside with you as you're heading out for work. And of course, as we head into the noon hour, that's when we're expecting most of that severe weather activity to roll into southern Saskatchewan. So we're going to keep our eye on any severe thunderstorm watches or warnings because of that. In Saskatoon, also feeling that warm air tonight, waking up tomorrow morning to drier conditions, and that will continue as we head into the noon hour. But as we head into the evening hours, that's when that severe weather will roll back into the city. Sam?
All right. Thanks, Ty.
No problem.
I will leave you to practice your moves.
Thank you. You too.
Before we leave you tonight, 2 weeks from today, kids will be back to school, and to get them ready, some little ones took their first steps onto a yellow school bus today, and for some parents, it's a big first for them too.
It's our first child to go through this program, so it's a little emotional at times. You just kind of sit back and you go, okay, this is the first time through kindergarten. We're not going to have this first again and have her have the opportunity. But it gives us all a lot of comfort just having this to do ahead of time, because there's a lot of questions we have as parents too.
There you go. Good job.
Today's activities were part of the annual First Ride to School event in Regina. It helps ease nerves as kids use transportation and head to school for the first time. Parents were able to ride with their kids today at 2 different time slots, and the children learned how to get on and off the bus and how to be safe too while riding. That's right, parents, 2 weeks to go, and that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, head to cbc.ca/sask. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel or download the CBC News app on your phone or tablet. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.